another episode of the Empowerment Platform where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals. We do that through bringing information that you can use in your life to transform and take you to that next level, whatever that may be. And today I have a good friend with me, Mr. Joel Kibble. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing? I'm excited to be on the Tyrus podcast.
And family, for those of you that are listening, there are very few people that I let into my inner circle. We all have that inner circle of close friends, close relationships. And the relationship I've been building with this gentleman is just proven to be fruitful time after time, conversation after conversation. I mean, we just spent minutes talking before we even start to do the show. And there was a book that when I was in ministry classes that I had to read, and it was called Asking the Right Questions.
Mm,
And Joel always always asks me the right questions, things that make me
mm,
things that make me ponder. They go a little bit deeper than the surface level. So I had to have him on as a
mm,
to share his life experience, his story, and to prayerfully provide information and content to you that will help you change your life. So a little bit
mm,
about his background. He's an award-winning musician, author, and inspirational speaker who travels the world using his art to help people heal. His musical career is stellar. He was a member or is a member of the award-winning Take Six, the multi-platinum selling group has earned 10 Grammys, 10 Dove Awards, and a host of other honors. So Joe, and in his bio, it says that dispense with the formalities, his friends call him Joey. So I am thinking that I have the privilege and honor of being his friend. I will use Joey.
you have it. That's right. I've let you into the inner sanctum.
So Joey, talk to us about your beginning. I know you had humble beginnings. Take us back, your childhood, your life. Just start to introduce us to the man that we see before us today.
Man, I was born into a pastor's family. I have an older brother and an older sister, Mark and Michelle. And I was born in Buffalo, New York. A lot of snow up in there. I didn't live there very long, but yeah, in fact, what I do remember about it is I remember because it's up in that Rust Belt. I remember going to church in the snow in the car, and it would rust out the bottom of the car, and literally there would be water splashing into the car. Man, I don't know why that memory came to me, but yeah. So when I was a little kid, that I mean before the age of seat belts, when you had to click in your seat belt, all of us be on one row, and it didn't take long before we moved down to Nashville, Tennessee. I've lived around Nashville, Alabama. I lived in Dothan, Alabama, and my dad had three churches: Dothan, Ozark, and Panama City, Florida. And he had to keep that circuit going. Uh, and so, yeah, being part of that pastor's family was how my upbringing started. So that's kind of how I was exposed to music. My dad did the congregational singing. My sister used to sneak in the sister sledge because he frowned on all the secular music, so you had to sneak and play the record. And so that's the first time I heard of Sister Sledge. And Mark was into Stevie Wonder, and Mark actually is he's one of the founding starters of Take Six.
Okay.
So he's the one that brought me into the group in 1991, the year after I had started college. But he was listening to stuff and developing his ear around that time. So I was exposed to music, but I didn't start with my music until much later. Man, I was a late bloomer, man. Started about 13 or 14 because I really lived under his shadow.
Mhm.
So Let me pause, make sure I don't run on with the story. So,
And that's good. So, definitely have some lots of similarities because growing up, my family singers, quartet, church,
huh?
traveling, going from place to place. My cousins and my great uncle, they have a group called the JD Gospel Singers. So
Oh,
travel all over and just sing. My grandmother was in the choir. My dad used to sing as a young boy and child. His mother sang. So definitely lots of singers.
wow, man. Yeah, okay. We may need to get a song before this podcast ends.
So the singing talent did not drop down into my system.
Man, you know what? You got so many secret talents. I don't believe you. But let's go ahead.
But music, drums, those types of things, those are the things that I love and that I enjoy. And I also remember them gospel heavy music. So you didn't hear about the times and the temptations and everybody that I know my parents would have listened to. You didn't really hear them talk
Right.
about that because they were saved, sanctified, and filled
All right. Filled with the Holy Ghost.
when that was coming up. So, but we
Yeah.
hear other music. It was something that was ingrained in us, and I still love it today. I love a good gospel song today. that
Good, good.
that will bring some tears out, and I don't know why. It's just something that connects with me when I'm hearing that music. So, as a kid of a minister, oftentimes we hear that it's a bubble or it's tight or it's difficult to be a minister's child. What was your experience with that?
Man, absolutely. That was my experience because people expect you to live to a certain standard. Unrealistically, they expect that your family has all the answers. They expect that you're not going to experience problems. But when they see how you live, and they see you have issues and you see you have the same issues, it's almost like it's a very critical eye that we grew up under because people have different expectations of you because you're part of a pastoral family. Um, some of those expectations are justified. They expect that you should live what your family is proclaiming, but unrealistically, they expect that you don't have the problems that they have. It's kind of a dichotomy. Um, so when they see you as a child um, doing some of the things they do, thinking this stuff, saying the same things they do, now that you violated that standard that's been in their mind, they plunge you a little further in their personal punishment, you know. And don't be dealing with something they're not dealing with. I mean, it's almost, I think one of the challenges is the families also try to live to an unrealistic expectation. And because of that, there is a dichotomy that's exposed, and the kids act it out first. Um, that was my family. It's like just music. How about just music? So when you have the belief that music can either only be sacred or secular, um, that's when you start seeing sneaking in the albums of Earth, Wind, and Fire and sneaking in the albums because it's been proposed that you can only listen to sacred music if you're about God, which is crazy because he has a practical outworking of his love
Yes.
that's seen in non-religious forums. When Jesus was on the earth, he 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 demonstrated his love for people in a way that was non-religious. It let people know, man, he just loves me. You know what I'm saying? And breaking the bread, he's just feeding people right now. He's not, you know what I'm saying? He's just taking care of basic needs. So somehow you get the idea that religion means that you don't have it's not played out on a secular field. that's where it should be played out. So when people see a dichotomy between uh that secular life and that religious life, and they see us now sneaking stuff in, and we getting into trouble, we want attention just like every other kid or whatever. That's where that critical eye comes in, and people start looking like, yo, you pretentious.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You like all the same stuff I like. Why you pretending? It's like, I'm not pretending. I'm actually under the pressure of this whole religious expectation that I'm supposed to have. And we went through all of that.
Oh, that's good. And I don't wanna beat down that door, but that to me, it shows a lack of understanding and just of you're not reading the Bible. If you are holding people to a certain standard, you're not reading the Bible because there is not one person or individual in that Bible other than Jesus
Mm,
that went through and didn't do something wrong.
mm,
Most of them did a lot of wrong, but they came back because they were under God's guidance and they had
yeah,
to get that forgiveness. And so when people
yeah.
hold up, "Oh, look at that." Yeah, I've heard it. They preachers' kids, they shouldn't be doing that, but they human.
They're human. They're human kids. So one of the funny, silly things now is, they didn't expect to see you in any clubs. They didn't expect to see us in the movies, in the movie theater, because who knows what's going on in the movie theater. Yet we could take the same movies and bring them home and play them. I'm about to date myself on the VCR, but that's cool. That's okay. Don't go into the theater because your angel stops outside the theater door while you going in. And you have to think this thing through. If your angel stopped at the theater door, you know what I'm saying? Your enemy would mess you up inside of there, knowing your angel had stopped. It's like some of the stuff we come up with to justify that incongruent thought pattern. It's amusement now. It's so funny, but that's the mindset I grew up with, man. So the bad side of that is, the challenging side is, when I start really going through stuff, when I go through some real stuff,
Mhm.
and now I'm reaching out, you know, as far as girlfriends and, relationships, and tired of being under the critical eye, and now I'm swinging out this way, trying to undo it. It's like now you get hammered, you know in greater proportion than people who aren't not religious at all,
Mhm.
because of that expectation that they have for
Yeah, they just sinners.
you. Right, sinners right up in the church. Well, yeah.
And so when you were coming out of that and you were going through these transitions, dealing with these things, you start to think about, and you mentioned in your bio that life is about love, acceptance, healing, and growth. How did you begin to grow? What were some outlets that you had to get from under that pressure?
That didn't happen until much later in life. My dad, uh, he loved us. He was a loving guy, but it was all about him and how he was seen, especially as a pastor, a leader, or whatever. So what's interesting is the experiences I had as a kid. I grew up later to realize what was really going on behind closed doors. And that's done a number on me. Um, so when you talk about external expectation,
Mhm.
now you're talking about internal expectation. What I'm thinking that I'm seeing as real, one day I'm realizing that it's not what I thought. I started realizing that my parents were like, I mean, they were beefing. They were. So to explain this, my dad grew up, he didn't get the attention that he felt like he needed from his parents. Every all parents say hurtful things at some point, whatever. But he grew up in a day where there was colorism. It was about your straight hair or your nappy hair. He had uh, he had brothers and sisters who were as dark as he was, but their hair, grade of hair, was a little nappier or a little straighter, and they got treated differently. But he came up trying to please his parents and not feeling like he could please his parents. He brought that into his own home. Now, my mother on the other side, she literally was the fa- of the phase where she choose a marriage, but really your parents kind of chose for you who they thought you should marry. So she really never had a chance to find out who she was. She never had a chance to live on her own and figure out who she is before she moved into her husband's home, who they, on the surface, looking at externals, had qualified for her.
Yeah.
When they got married, it was a whole new game. And when you talk about expectations and what's unrealistic, I now see that that's how their marriage jumped off. And every marriage has a level of that.
Mhm.
But by the time I came along, the third, um, it's like they were hitting the wall at that point. She was tired of being manipulated. Life wasn't going the way he wanted to go. He was supposed to blow up and be this major uh, evangelist. It wasn't happening. In fact, life instead is hitting him head on. So he was very angry behind closed doors. In front of people, he was the man. It's like church members who knew him to this day, I mean, they break out in tears when they think about being under his ministry. But when he came home, he was angry, he was ornery. It's like, and I started seeing that, and it took a while to realize something is wrong here.
Mhm.
I didn't realize this until well into my adolescent years that something is wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I would see certain things and not really thinking this shouldn't be happening. You know what I'm saying? So it was years before stuff started settling in, and more so when I started hitting brick walls myself. When I started crashing emotionally, I began looking back on, well, who can I blame? Well, my parents. They made me like this, such and such. And soon I began to realize the widespread nature of this dysfunction that was happening in my home. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and to think about it, it is a and my mom and I talked about this yesterday. She was one of the people that I started with the thank yous, and what happens is all of our families have history, and it takes as we grow, then we begin to look back and see and hear the stories of the things that just weren't right. But when you come up a certain way, you see it as normal. It becomes a normalcy. So if my mom, my dad are cussing and fussing, I grow up to think that that's the way I should be, and then I take that to my relationship, and
Right,
I take those things that I may want to get rid of
right,
to my relationship because it has become
right,
ingrained in me. And so
right,
hearing that your dad had a certain way is because and you pointed that out. He didn't get the attention that he thought he needed as a kid that transformed into an adult seeking attention. And when it
right,
blew up the way he thought it should have, then you guys got the anger, the I'm not satisfied. And what's really eye opening to me is I think about my own life when
mm,
going for goal after goal, and you and I discussed this, when
mm,
is it enough? What is it that I need to satisfy me? And if
right,
you're listening out there, think about what you're doing in life. You don't have to repeat the cycle. And we say that often as if it's just something that you say and you get on and you keep going. But
yeah,
it can change your paradigms and shift your mindset, and you don't have to do or repeat the same things that have been done and passed down to us.
right.
Very good.
Wow, yeah. So, um, I think with me, it didn't really hit fully until really until I got into Take Six. I got into college, did my first year. I felt like I was undecided, but I felt like, man, I could have done any number of things. What am I going to do? Am I going to get a? Am I going to become a doctor so I can make sure my my money is flowing in? Am I going to become a lawyer? Am I going to do something I'm passionate about or something that I need to do to take care of my family? What am I going to do? But that's when my brother came and basically was like, look, Mervyn Warren, one of the founding members, is leaving the group. Um, I kind of had my own group at that time. It wasn't anywhere near the level of Take Six, but I was still trying to live under my brother's shadow. And he saw that and he's like, you know what? Your ear is trained. You know, it may be. I think we consider getting to the group. Consider filling his spot. And I'm like, psh, yes, yesterday. What? Absolutely. And that brought on a phase where now I'm traveling, I'm meeting all these superstars. You know, but they had already begun to achieve their accomplishments. Not begun, they had already achieved a major level of accomplishment. And now I'm in a situation where there is a lot more fame. There's a lot more uh, rubbing shoulders with people I only dreamt of meeting. So you have the first few years that just blew my mind. I mean, my nose is just wide open, just experiencing all this stuff, going to all these different cities, traveling to international countries. But imagine then hitting that ceiling when you get to a certain level of success for a certain amount of time and then realize that your demons are still there with you.
Oh,
Your dysfunction is not just still there with you, but it has been growing as you have been growing. So, you know, being down south, you know, there are certain types of weeds that will grow up,
mhm.
they'll grow out, and then they'll take root.
Yeah.
Then they'll grow out further and they'll take root. So that if you turn your head for a couple of weeks and come back, this weed that only started this big is now spread out along the ground, and you can't just pull up one little tentacle
Yeah.
because that hasn't stopped the weed. If you follow all the tentacles back to their center, you realize how huge, what kind of root system underneath the ground it has developed. And now you're pulling up most of the ground as well, trying to pull up this weed. Well, that's how my dysfunctional mindset had been growing with me while from when I was young till now as an adult. It's not just, you know, dealing with pornography or dealing with, you know, trying to outrun my parents' divorce because they eventually got divorced, down throwing myself into relationships with women, trying to get this feeling of love, trying to feel validated all my life. And now as an adult, those challenges, those dysfunctions are strong. They have a root system that has been growing all these years as I've been growing. And so now they're ready to explode above ground and take over my life. Um, Imagine getting to that point and realizing that the stuff you dreamt about, man, if I could just become famous,
Yep.
man, if I could just accomplish this, man, if I could, then I will finally feel validated. I'll finally feel like I've done something, like I'm supposed to be here, and getting to that place and realizing I don't in the least bit feel validated. And if I've gotten to this level and can't get that feeling of validation, what's left?
Right.
So imagine the despair of having to realize, man, I've done all this and I still feel jacked up on the inside. If you ask me on the real, I still feel so. Imagine hitting that ceiling and now beginning to fall back on, oh man, I'm not sure any of this is going to change. Oh man, I thought I could outrun my their divorce. I thought I could.
Wow. Wow. Now, my question to you is growing up a pastor's son, in those times as you were going through your go through and you were growing and you reached success, was there a point to where you felt disconnected with God? That's why you were still empty? Or was there something else there that maybe just overshadowed God and his peace and, his peace surpassed all our understanding and his burden is light and all of those things that we're taught growing up, you had to have heard them. How or why do you think that that didn't take a strong hold in your life than the weeds?
Okay, so Holy Spirit help me with this. Number one was because I was seeing duplicity at home. Number one, I'm seeing how my dad is accepted, what he says and what he preaches about, and how he is in front of people. I'm hearing all the religious jargon. I'm
Mhm.
hearing all the rhetoric, you know, and then I'm coming home and I'm seeing a completely different side. And the two are not crossing each other. So there's a way to speak when you're in front of people and when you're in public and when you're preaching and when you're being religious. And then there's another way that you're being when you're at home, you're behind closed doors. And that duplicity drives kids bananas. They need congruence,
Right.
which is why they can follow a gangster rapper and they have more credibility because at least it looks like they live what they say.
Yeah.
You may get into a whole bunch of trouble, but at least he's real. At least she's real about what they're saying. What I'm seeing at home is not real. It's pretend. It's fake. And so the whole Jesus that you're talking about, when I'm going into real problems and real issues, now the more you talk about this Jesus and this religion that I haven't seen working at home, it actually makes me resentful now. It causes, so that's the one thing. The second thing is I'm going through this phase and I don't have a personal relationship. I was taught and grown on how to be religious. I
Yeah.
was not taught on how to hear God's voice. And so I know perfectly how to be religious, and being religious is actually bringing on more problems for me because it has no outworking. And of all the years I've invested in doing what my parents taught me is this is the right way, and now there's no application to what I'm going through. Now I'm angry. Number 3, your parents are your first view of God
Ooh, yes. Take us there.
until you because really, as the Bible says, the father is a borrowed name. To be an earthly father, that's a borrowed name from your real father. So what happens is you are God to them until they understand who God is. Your job as a father is really, in essence, to as quickly as possible point them to who their real father is. That's the essence of your job. And when I don't have a relationship with God, I think that he acts and believes and moves like the dysfunction that I grew up seeing
Mm,
because that's my only experience of who God must be. Does that make sense?
that
So
makes
I'm going through all of these things are playing a part. And if you have all, it's just a matter of how much trouble you have before you get to the point where you're going to crash. And depending on how hard you crash, that's when the resentment comes out. That's when the anger comes out. That's when you know what, forget all this. I can't do anything. If this doesn't work, I'm going to go find what does work.
mm.
I'm listening to you. Let me go grab it real quick, but I'm listening.
So that is definitely some good information. It talks about that brokenness. It talks about that not having a consistent upbringing of seeing this is how you do things and just being real. I think that a lot of times with our pastors, and especially pastors that get wrapped up into the traditional aspects of it, and they're not in that word really living it, they get trapped into trying to fit in. And also for our pastor listeners, I am well aware that pastors have struggles. And even some of the pastors that I know have talked about, you know, everybody just wants me to be their pastor. Nobody really wants me to be their friend. So I don't really have anybody to talk to unless there's another pastor. And I have seen recently in the last several years, pastors beginning to commit suicide, beginning to leave the ministry, beginning to do things that other people would say, well, a pastor shouldn't do that. Well, a pastor's human. And those human things outplay when there is no outlet. And now for
Right.
you, just going through that whole process, you kind of hit that wall and then you broke. So once you hit that wall and you broke, even at your pinnacle, so to speak, you got the success, you have the fame, you have the accolades, the money. It wasn't enough. How did you come through? What brought you back? What saved you? What healed you?
The breaking point. Now, I can't even say that there was one particular breaking point. It was a series of breaking points. If a tree grows out and its limb grows out so far, and it's been growing for years, there will come, if it's a weak tree, there will come a breaking point. There will come a storm that will finally put too much pressure on that limb and it will break. Or more, if it's if the ground is saturated enough with water and the wind is strong enough, it will uproot the entire tree, roots and all. And we've been seeing that happening a lot. There were series of breaking points, and this is what makes God so deep. He saves through those kinds of using those kinds of breaking points. He uses those kind of breaking points. My dad had breaking points, but one of the again unrealistic expectations was that pastors don't have problems.
Yeah.
So pastors, it's looked down on that you need a counselor. If you need a counselor, well then that means that the Jesus thing ain't working.
Right.
Every other industry, if they're serious about their industry, they are providing services all around what you might need so that you can come to work and do your best job. I never forget going to Mutual of Omaha and seeing the compound, seeing the workout gym, seeing the medical facility, seeing the eat right facility. I mean, the stop smoking program, the obesity, situation where they're trying, because if they don't address your issues, they don't have an employee. But in the religious sector, none of that exists, or none of that did exist. So literally pastors are sitting ducks. If they have problems and they don't have somebody they can call, then there's no counseling services that are really set up for pastors, especially, or they've been taught to have too much pride to go look for help
Mm.
because they should be the answer. And they are a tree that's waiting for a storm to come up with a shallow root system, and eventually the pressure is going to build up and it's going to knock you over. And depending on how strong that storm is, it could cause major devastation when it does knock you over. And so I've seen a little more assistance that's given to people and leaders in charge, but not nearly enough. You got to think, if people are following it, that's what makes leaders like that such easy targets.
Right.
If you have no accountability, if you have too much expectation, if you have people who are following you, if I was the devil, I'd be looking for people like you are perfect for me, because I'm not just hitting you and knocking you over. I am hitting you and all 500 of your members.
Mhm.
When I knock you down, I'm going to make sure it reverberates throughout your church. I'm gonna make sure the expectation is way too high. I'm gonna make sure that you are way too isolated. I'm gonna make sure you are way too unaccountable. So then if I hit you, I can look, and I'm sorry if I'm getting, religious here or whatever, but the Bible says that he's like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour, and he only has but a short time.
Yep.
So business wise, he's not going to waste his time trying to hit every little body. Yeah, we all know that. When we try to make an impact, we're looking for people who lead people. He's looking for people who lead people so that he doesn't have to spend uh, a year trying to tear down somebody and then go tear down 100,000 more. He's going to find one person whose influence can tear down 10,000 more. And he'll hit that person and knock him, it hit him hard. Just like back in the day, when you're talking about slave owners, they decide that if they want to intimidate the entire crew, they take a man and hang him up in front of everybody else and do atrocious things. And that intimidates everybody so that hopefully nobody tries to escape. It's been a demonic principle that's been used for years. So in my situation, when you see this kind of stuff happening, and you realize that's one of the reasons why, Tyrus, I never wanted to go into the ministry. I could do anything. Give me the music business. Give me. I'll go into the medical field. What I don't want is to go into the ministry because I've seen what happens behind closed doors. Not just the closed doors of the church. I see what happens behind closed doors of my family and my house. So to answer your question, you get to a point. You get to a series of breaking points, and pray the breaking points. Let me put it this way. I live near Chattanooga. Whenever you start traveling up throughout Chattanooga, when you get up into those mountains and you're coming down the other side, there are runaway ramps.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen runaway ramps, but just in case your vehicle is going too fast and your brakes start giving out, there's a ramp that departs the descent, and it's full of like certain amount of feet of just gravel, and it goes back up the mountain to specifically stop you from crashing.
Ooh, okay, okay.
It costs, I'm sure it costs, when I hear that trucks have hit that runaway ramp, it costs a lot of money to get you towed out or whatever, but on the other side of the mountain is the cliff. I've never seen it, but they tell me at the bottom of that cliff are years of wrecked vehicles that have gone over the side. So God gives us these series of runaway ramps. What do runaway ramps look like? They look like prison time.
Hmm.
They look like disease or some debilitating situation. They look like people. They're disguised in unfortunate covers, but underneath they're actual blessings because you are descending too quickly. And if you don't pull out on if he doesn't pull you out on one of these runaway ramps, you're over the side of the cliff.
Ooh, that's good.
And so a lot of us find ourselves in hospitals dealing with junk suddenly come up. Some of us find ourselves in prison that, it looks like it's unfortunate, but literally you were about to kill yourself. And if he didn't pull you out of that that gang life that you were living in, whatever the case was, or if he didn't give you a timeout, because I know, that kind of situation is in prison systems as well. The point is, he's trying to give you a breaking point
Mhm.
where he can slow down this momentum, start putting you in a situation where you can start thinking and send somebody who's able to now challenge your perspective. That happened to me in a series of events, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. Thinking about those, what and I can visualize, sitting here as I close my eyes, I can visualize different points in my life that I hit that runaway.
Mm, mm.
I can fully say now and speak to knowing there are certain points that I got to where I hit that runaway and it stopped and it changed my life. And there are some things, and Lord knows,
Mhm.
debilitating illness, having a disability that they say won't ever go away,
Mm.
something in your life where they say, is either this is going to kill you, but the medicine probably going to make you weak too. So
Mm.
I remember the doctor telling me, really, you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't.
Wow.
And I think back to why God, why me? Why would you bring this upon my life? And now when I look at it, it's a piece of my process. It has humbled me in
Hmm.
ways that I would not have been humbled not having it.
Hmm.
It has given me the ability to, and I'm not perfect and it's not all the time, but there are times when other people have been sick around me where I would have ignored it. Now I don't because I know exactly what they're going through.
Wow.
Bit more.
Wow.
So I do understand wholeheartedly some of those things that stop you from going down that wrong path to death, because that's the other side of it. We just crash and burn. Out of the different experiences that you had, the different runaways, what was one that you think or feel really impacted you the most and started to bring you out?
Hmm. 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 Man, I remember one time living here in Nashville. I was dating this girl, and just to give you context, I threw myself into relationships. Now I begin to understand as I've gotten into the assessment why I behave this way. But just before the divorce, my mother left. She was tired of the abuse. She finally worked up the courage to leave. Um, but pretty much, I was left with my dad, and he raised me, and it was kind of like a codependent type of situation. I had to take care of him emotionally, and he put responsibilities on me unknowingly that I've carried throughout life. This sense of being responsible for everything that's happened to everybody else. It started then. Um, but let me see. I would throw myself into female relationships because I really wanted a relationship with my mother, but she was emotionally departed because she was trying for my father. And as a consequence, she was actually unreachable by me as well.
Yeah.
And so I threw myself into relationships with women to get that validation, to get that I meant something to somebody. And the one girl that I had at the moment uh, was pretty much running game on me. I had just gotten into Take Six. She kind of saw an opportunity for, financial gain or whatever. I remember uh, being manipulated. And that wasn't her fault. That was my fault because I gave myself to be manipulated.
Right.
And here was my mindset that'll help you understand. I'm thinking to be a savior to her
Yeah.
because if I can be a savior to her, then she'll always need me and she'll never reject me. So here's the interesting thing. I got to find people who are broken and dysfunctional as a norm because people who are whole, they don't need saving.
Correct.
So I'm not attracted to people who are healthy. I'm attracted to people who are sorry. I'm attracted to people who are broken, trying to be their salvation, and I can't be that.
Yeah.
And what I find that's happening is I end up just getting manipulated. And the manipulation was so high that I allowed to happen, and I didn't know who I was. And what I'm doing is not working. I'm not changing her and making her better. I'm thinking that I can change. I grew up thinking I can change people. I can make them into what I want them to be, and then they'll always need me. It always backfires. That never works. But at this moment, I had begun to realize that she had like three other boyfriends and she was running games on them. And it so dejected me. It messed me up so bad. And I was in so much pain. And it won't just, I know that it wasn't just her. I know it was a collection of all of the dysfunction that was happening, but I was in so much mental pain that I just wanted to sleep.
Mm,
Because at least when I was sleeping, I wasn't feeling this pain.
okay.
I wasn't feeling dejection. I wasn't feeling uh, that I was rejected. And I remember taking Benadryl. It was the first time I'd taken Benadryl to put myself to sleep.
Mm,
And it seemed like that's not a deep thing, but it was the threshold to it was a gateway to a few things. Now I realize people don't aspire to be crack addicts. They're
absolutely.
crack addicts because they're trying to silence the pain. They're trying to silence the questions. They're trying to silence the hurt. And that's when I reached for the Benadryl. And I remember waking up with this sense that I'm in danger because if it's Benadryl today, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's going to be something else tomorrow because the pain is not going away. And I remember that being a major turning point. Now, I didn't immediately get help from that, but I started to realize, realized a sense of danger that I was in, that if something didn't change, I had this sense that tomorrow it's not going to be Benadryl. You know what I'm saying? Tomorrow it's going to be something else. Not realizing that my dad had been an over the counter drug addict
Mm,
for years.
wow.
And now I'm following unknowingly in his footsteps. And now I understand he was trying to escape pain, the fact that he can't deal with it. But here I am following right in his footsteps, not because I aspire to be an addict, but I'm trying to escape pain. So I threw myself into sex. It wasn't just Benadryl at the time. I threw myself into crazy situations. So to answer your question, that began the process of something might not be right.
Mhm.
I think I need some help. I had way too much pride to ask for it, but that's when I begin to have those series of accidents. To answer your question, and I'll jump all the way to the end. It really didn't culminate until I got married, and now I'm facing divorce.
Oh, wow.
So this was like I've been married for 12 years. And the reason why I make that jump is because I'm giving you the beginning point of when I began to see it
Mhm.
and the ending point. Once I started heading for divorce, my life was a failure.
Yeah.
When I tell you, fame cannot cause me to outrun dysfunction. Uh, Money cannot cause me to outrun it. Relationships can't cause me to outrun it. And now I am failing. And so here's a downside of growing up with a performance-based relationship because my relationship with my father was performance-based.
Mm.
I had to perform to get his validation. I had to be in baseball and I had to smack it out of the park.
Yeah.
I had to be in swimming and I had to come in first. You know, I remember one time when he promised me, if you get first place, I'll give you a dog. He got me the dog. I got first place. When he used it again later on, if you don't get first place, I'm giving this dog away.
Ooh, so now penalty.
And now I'm coming in second. I tried my look, the dude I was racing, he was a full grown adult. I'm 13 years old,
Mm.
14. This dude is a 14-year-old. To this day, I don't think he was 14. I think he was like 21. But he was that big and that developed, and I couldn't beat him. And when I came home, the dog was gone. Now, watch this. I don't even remember. I barely remember this situation because there are blocks of my life that have been etched out that I cannot remember.
Mhm.
And my mother was like, "How can you not remember? You were a basket case. I was screaming at your father, go get the dog, go get, why would you do it?" I don't, I barely remember that. But growing up with a performance based relationship, now having not been able to perform by being in a marriage, in a functional marriage, I had finally succumbed to the dysfunction that I was trying to outrun. Now I am divorced. My parents were divorced. I did the same thing. And I didn't want to sing and I didn't want to get up in front of anybody and I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be, all I wanted to do was crawl up under a rock and die. And that was the point where, and it's funny, I didn't even reach out for help for myself. I was trying to reach out for help for my failing relationship,
Mhm.
but she didn't want that help. So I had to pursue it myself for myself, hoping that it would benefit my marriage. But if it doesn't, I'm going to have to get it for myself. That's where the turning point happened, where I can point to you and say, that's when I started seeing results. But I had hit what was my rock bottom.
Yeah. Wow. And that took some time over years of dysfunction, years of having these things packed up on the inside, years of living not to your full potential and definitely not what God intended or wanted for you. And I think we all go through that, and that's nothing new. The the Israelites went through that when they wandered around in that wilderness.
Right.
There's always a journey.
Yeah.
God has those stop gates that say, "Hey, if you want to take this path, I need you can come out of it right here." Sometimes we
Yeah.
blow right by it. We're doing
Yeah.
what we do, or
But
we
let me answer one more question when you say that. You asked me, when did my understanding of him start to change?
yeah,
It was during those situations.
okay.
He would come to me and say, I'm not condemning you. By getting that help, that therapist, he began to speak through that therapist and let me know, dude, you're so afraid to be labeled as crazy that you can't handle. The fact that you came in here confirms you're not crazy. It confirms that you're going to come out of here. But you couldn't tell me that before because my parents had created this idea that asking for help, you're a failure.
Yeah.
And so he began to speak to me, and I began to see him in a new way. His relationship with me is not performance based.
Mm,
Now, all of this religion that I had put up on a shelf, I started taking down off the shelf and started to realize who he really was. You mean you already died for my sins? I don't have to act right to receive what you are. It's not based on how I act. This has got, I know I misunderstood that.
yeah.
Grace is unmerited
Yep.
favor. You mean I didn't do anything? I didn't have to smack it out the park to. To have your grace? You mean I can't earn it? And now I'm beginning to see him in a different way. And then to hear after all that, not only is this not an epic failure for you, but I know the plans that I have for you. And
Mm.
their plans to prosper you and give you an expect. Now I'm in tears. Like you mean to tell me that I didn't screw up my life? I didn't screw up the rest of my life? Nah, son, the rest of your life had me. Your end is going to be so much more powerful than your beginning because of what I'm doing for you right now. Now I start to understand who he really is. Now my religion is being broken down into this relationship. And now he gives me, and it's not just now, he began to give me this passion to help other people, especially who have gone through my kind of situation. Now I feel a burden to try to reach whoever those are and let them know it ain't over. Look, trust me, it's not over. You can't do enough to get outside of his love. You can't do it.
That's good.
And take me for an example. You cannot. His love is so incredible. You cannot. Now, you can decide you don't believe it.
Right.
And if there's any sin that gets up under God's skin, symbolism wise, it is unbelief.
Mm.
It is a fact that I did everything for you and you don't believe me. He doesn't trip about the stuff you've done. He doesn't trip about the how far you've fallen. He doesn't trip about all that kind of stuff because he's like, that's why my son came into the world
Yep.
to save you, specifically people just like you. But if there's this sin that gets up under his skin, it's that I don't believe it.
Mm. And you covered so much, so much. And my takeaway that I'm thinking of right now is sometimes we don't go through things just for ourselves.
Hmm.
God uses us as a if we come through the journey and we accept and then we actually walk in our purpose, he's using us to reach other people, those that he needs,
Oh, now you just opened up a can of worms.
those that
Because
go ahead,
go
go
ahead. Go ahead and finish.
those that he need to draw unto him, he uses us, our story, our trials, our tribulations, our process to share with those that he needs to bring closer to him that may not see it otherwise.
Now let me set this podcast on fire.
Blow it.
Let me throw a match into this podcast. What if he knew before he put you in your mother's womb everything that you were going to deal with? Everything that you would experience, and yet not only did he save you while you were at your height of being an enemy to him, but he had in his mind who you were going to touch and used everything that you were going to go through to be qualified to reach those people who've been through the same. What if he knew that from the beginning?
Knew it. Design.
And now you're in that position just like Peter, where he says, when you are converted, not if you're converted.
Mhm.
You have no idea who you are right now. And you about to bust your head against the wall. But when you are converted, go strengthen your brethren. What if he's coming at all of us, knowing what we have gone through, knowing the kind of mistakes we would make? You see what I'm saying? And that has nothing to, in fact, he used it and weaved it into your story, your amazing story, to bring you to where you are today, where you realize that you have been caught. Now, look, I don't know what my purpose is. He hasn't revealed what my purpose is. So even your statement of walking into purpose, he'd have to let me know that here's your whole timeline. I haven't really seen him do that with people beforehand, but He's given enough to reveal to you what his will is
Yeah.
so that you can know it and you walk in that, what you do know. But imagine now all these people who he saved you from your sins. He walked through the process. He waited to reveal himself with how he really is, and he's got a purpose at the end of it. Shh. That means that there's nothing you can do that will so screw him up that he'll stop loving you. And you know why I understand that? Because I have a little kid. I got two daughters now.
Mm,
And while I don't want them to mess up, there are certain things that I have to let them walk through because they're
absolutely.
not listening right now. But wait until you get to a certain point. So I have to be patient
Right.
because once you do burn your hand, absolutely I will be there. But you're not going to understand that you need to stay away from the stove. And even when you do burn your hand on the stove, I'm gonna be right there. And I'm
Absolutely.
gonna be there to talk you through it. Come on, man.
Not only once you do that and learn that lesson, you will have a greater appreciation and the trial that you've been through. Had I never been sick, I wouldn't have the same level of appreciation for those who are sick now,
Come on, man.
those
Come
who
on, man.
can't get around, for those who feel like I wouldn't even have the mentality I have because sometimes we look at people who are sick, who are shut in, who are down, and we say, "Oh, they just need to pick themselves up." But having
Right.
went through the process,
Right.
I
Right.
understand now some days you just wanna lay down. You don't wanna do anything because your body is riddled with pain, or you're
Mm,
taking medication, or you've become hooked on the medication because I've been there to where you're just popping pain pills, and now that leads to, as you stated earlier, the gateway.
yep.
Everybody that's on crack, heroin, whatever, they're just not drug addicts. There was a reason that they went there. Some through pain pills. I just need something else. I've been there to where I
Right.
got all these pills and I'm still hurting every day.
Right.
What is that next thing? Thank God I have a support system that
Come on, man.
you through and keep you from going down that path. But I think about all the people who don't have that support and don't have that person to just say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe not. Maybe you don't want to take all those pills. Maybe you don't want to go try this." Because I've thought it.
Mm.
People think it's just it is a lot.
Oh, man.
All the way down there. And so now you're in this place to where you're helping other people heal. What does that
Mhm.
look like? What is it that and you are well qualified to speak on healing because you have healed yourself. What is your goal? What is the art of helping people heal for you? What does that mean?
Man, now that is speaking to people. When you've been through something, you know how to speak to the people who are in that. The Bible talks about the fact that he's given this ministry of reconciliation. We are reconciled. And then he is gracious enough to let you share in this reconciliation process. He could just do it, he could just have it himself, and you have nothing to do with it. But it is a joy and a pleasure and intimacy to share in this, not just his sufferings, but this experience of reconciliation. When I went through that divorce, there were only a certain caliber of people who could speak to me. Now, my mother was divorced, but my mother had not gone through the healing process. And so she would tell me, well, son, you'll be okay. But there was somebody else who'd been divorced and been through the healing process. And they would say the same thing she said, but there was a power that attended when they said it. In fact, there were people who actually didn't have to say anything. They were just there and present listening. They were just there for me. And their presence was power because they've been through situations like this. They come through it and they knew how to listen. It wasn't even about saying anything. They knew how to be there
Yeah.
beside me in a way that other people cannot be there for me now. So when it comes to dealing with somebody in pain, they need Tyrus, because even if Tyrus doesn't say anything to them, the fact that you understand because you've been through this thing is a comfort, and it's like a balm for them, a healing situation for them, because you know when to be quiet. You know what not to say. How many people have come to you? You go through, you'll make it through this. Yeah, you just ain't prayed enough. And literally their words are like knives to you. The fact that you can be in their presence, listen to their story, and not say anything at the right time means that this is a ministry that's been given to you. And then when it is time to say something, it's like you ain't got to say much. When you say you're going to make it, that's different than if I say you're going to make it,
Yep.
because you dealt with the pain that they're talking about. There is a power that attends your phrase that doesn't attend my phrase. And he knows that, which is why he allowed you to go through what you went through, so you can speak to those people that I can't talk to.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
That's what that looks like. So you in the other side of that then is, um now I know what people look like when they're hurting like I was hurting. You know why? I know about about how a family sits in church, how they really
Yeah.
can't stand each other, but they put the kids between them
Yeah.
so that they look like that we're functional and we're all about our kids. But really, if you took the kids out, they're like two magnets that cannot be around each other. The kids have actually been used as a decoy because they're really dead to each other. Now I know what that looks like because I've lived that. I know what dysfunction looks like. When I'm talking to people, I know that whoever the motivator is, you're a preacher. You're supposed to motivate. If I really want to see whether what you're doing is working or not, I don't look at you. I look at your wife. I look at the look on her face. I look at your kids. I listen to how they respond to you or how they don't. I can see whether there's a connection or not because I've been through it.
Right.
So I know what it looks like. I know what that look in your eye looks like because I've been through that. That feels like a curse, but it's actually a gift because now you can see the people who've been through the stuff that you've been through, and you can start praying on their behalf right now without even having to talk to them because I know what they look like.
Oh, that's good.
So when you ask me, well, how is this then? How is it walked out? It feels like a curse and a burden. Somebody just came to me, man. He was a pastor who just come to me and was like, "Look, man, it's over. It's over. I and I'm calling you because I don't know what it's I don't know what to do, but my marriage is done."
Mm.
And when I say that it tore my heart up to hear what he was saying, because I've been through it. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, come on, man. Just try before you come this route.
Yeah.
Because yes, it is my gift to give you the tools to help walk you out of this situation. But please go back and do everything you can. And I'm thinking this, I'm not even saying it because for me, it's just to listen right then.
Yep.
It's not to say anything. Just listen. And it is a burden that tears up my heart, but it's also a gift. Those are the kind of people that God is sending me to. And I was just wrestling with God on this earlier this week. Like, God, this is too overwhelming, man. Nobody feels that pain of what the kids are going to have to go through. and the disconnection between with a husband and wife like I have because I've been through that. But that's who I'm called. I imagine, I guess it's no different for doctors.
Yeah.
When you see people come up ripped up, bloody, coming into the emergency room, I guess it can become routine. But it's like you know it because you've seen it. You've been through it. I see that. And so it's not even an easy path to help people to heal. But that's why I got into extreme execution coaching, because now I can give you tools that you can implement that will help you to heal. That's why I've learning the five love languages again,
Mhm.
because I can give you tools to help you to understand who you are, how you've been created, and I can help you to walk to healing. The one thing I cannot stand is to see people who have accepted dysfunction as a normal way of life.
Yeah.
It drives me batty because that's where I was trying to decide, should I just accept this? Because my whole family, they, it seems like so many of them have accepted dysfunction. They're not trying to come out of it. They just accepted the way it was. Our parents were like this. They didn't break free. I don't need to, it's just the way it is. So it's not just that that's the way they've chosen to live life. They need you now to co-sign on the way that they live life like that. So if I decide that I'm going to break that atmosphere and I will not accept dysfunction, but I will, I will push past to full healing, it strangely disrupts their comfort zone.
Oh, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But
Absolutely.
when you start talking the way we're talking and doing podcasts like this, it disrupts the comfort zone of people who have accepted dysfunction as a norm.
Yep.
And the first person who come, the people who come after you are not what you consider your enemies. It's the people closest to you who have not accepted this process. They are the most offended. They hurl themselves at you like zombies because you're breaking free of what they're still enslaved to. Man, I don't know if you meant to get into this, but I told you.
And deeper. And that is so true because and you mentioned it, it's what they're comfortable. They have become normalized in dysfunction. And whenever you come, it's a process to get out, takes you out of your comfort zone and it hurts. They always talk about the old thing about, oh, the dog that had a tack in his foot. Well, he hollers, but he doesn't pull it out or let you pull it out because it don't hurt enough. So even though they're going through some kind of struggle, it's not
Ooh.
want them to change and go through another process. They're comfortable with getting fussed at, cussed out, talked about. I'm comfortable with that.
It's
But
familiar.
right. You start building me up, this can't be real.
Right,
Nobody talks like
right,
that where we come from. Why are you different? Oh, you changed.
right.
All of those things because I should be changing. I'm a different creature. If you renew your mind, you would be a different creature too. And I like the
But
way
it's unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar to them. And unfamiliar is scary.
yes.
And
Absolutely.
it shouldn't be unfamiliar. You should want to heal so much. I'm willing to take unfamiliar. Unfamiliar will change and heal my situation. You think you jump at it. No, man. People today are married to dysfunction.
Yes.
They watch it continually on TV. It's like they're used to that drama. That's what gets ratings is dysfunction.
Absolutely.
They feed on it day in and day out. And so when you come on this, it's distasteful because they feed on dysfunction. So your healing is they don't have a taste for that.
Right.
And they spit it out of their mouth. It causes them to throw up. That's
Telling it.
that's kind of what this healing process looks like in answer to your question. What does that look like? Sometimes it looks like this, but you keep laboring because you labor for that time when they're just like, they finally see the sunlight and they're like, thank God I let healing happen. Thank God that I let what you're saying. help to break me out of this situation. That's what you live for.
Absolutely. And you're so right about it with what we want, what we feed ourselves, what we put into our minds. It's stuff to support what we want. And I had low key, I was mad at an old friend of mine. He goes on live, talks a whole bunch of nonsense, gets hundreds of people on there. I went on live to talk about something positive, 5 or 6 people. And I'm like, how is he getting all these people talking
Look,
about what's familiar, what's comfortable? Some people don't want to be stretched, but will complain. Well, if you want something different in your life, you gotta do something different. Um, Jim Rohn said that if you want to what was it? It was something about working. If you wanna make money, just work on the job, but if you want to be wealthy, work on yourself.
oh, people don't want to hear that because what does that look like? That looks like uncomfortability, and that looks like stretching. And that a pastor best described it this way. He said, and I was at the point where I had realized that my marriage was not going to succeed, not because God can't do something for it and He can't change it, but because both of us didn't want it.
Mm,
And I had learned a vital lesson. One lesson was you can't change anybody.
right.
But the next lesson is you can't make somebody want health.
Mm,
No
that's
matter how much I want it for you, I can't make you want it from my sheer willpower. You have to want it for yourself. So that's when I realized that my marriage was terminal
mhm,
because my partner did not want health.
right.
And because you don't want it, there is nothing that can be done now. And I had to cut. So an old pastor, man, this is like my one of my spiritual mentors. Man, he's smooth, man. He's in his 80s now. He came to me in a jovial spirit, such and such, such. How are you doing? So I'm telling him all of this. And he said, there was a man, if you've been in any church, once they go into the story,
Yeah.
there was a man who had an accident, motorcycle accident, and he was pretty messed up. But the most damaged was his arm. The nerves were damaged. So they did everything they could to rehabilitate his arm. They put him in programs, they put him in rehab, they did everything, they did surgeries. Till finally one day they told the man, um, we've done everything that we can. Your arm is not going to be able to be healed. Unfortunately, it is neurologically dead. And we recommend that you amputate it. But the man was horrified of how he was going to look with one arm. So he opted to keep the arm on. Now, every time he comes into a party, he's got to walk into the door, open the door with his loud hand, and then grab it and pull it through the door.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He's got to put his arm through his jacket. He's got to put it up on the table so that it looks like the other hand. It looks like it's normal because he's scared of what people are going to think.
Right.
But the irony is, everybody that you think you're fooling can see that your arm is functionless. So everything he's going through to try to conceal that his arm is dead, he's not fooling anybody
Right.
but himself. That's not even to speak about the toxicity of having a dead limb on your body
Mm,
that's not going to heal. Whenever you have dead organs in your body that will not heal, they become toxic in themselves if they're not removed, and they will kill the rest of the body. And I'm sitting here like, this dude is smooth. He is smooth because he never broke his smile as he's telling his story. But he said to me, this is what he said without saying it. So if I accused him of, you told me this, I wouldn't be able to nail him to this day because he never said it. But he spoke in form of a parable.
Yeah.
And what I understood was you're afraid of how you're going to be seen if you actually file for divorce because this relationship is terminal. You're afraid of how people are going to see you. But if you leave it the way it is, number one, you're not fooling anybody. They can see that it's dead. They
Ooh,
can see y'all don't talk to each other. They don't see y'all don't love each other. They can see that. They can figure that out. Anybody with any sense can figure that out. But more than that, you have to do this for the sake of your child because she's going to grow up like you grew up,
yeah.
seeing dysfunction and thinking that it's normal. And she will grow up to have the same kind of dead relationship on paper, thinking this is how it's supposed to be, which is why God took you from that relationship and healed you the way that He is. It would be better to go back to her and explain here's what I did wrong.
Yep. Absolutely.
This is what didn't happen. This is the lesson that I learned. And you don't have to do the same thing. He told me all of that. And literally, when he was done with the story, he didn't wait to hear what I had to say. He just got up and left. He dropped the mic and left. I was like, God, you are so smooth. Now I understand what I have to do because this is my commitment to healing. I have to heal because this is my daughter. I have to heal because God has a whole different ending for my life that I haven't seen yet. I have to heal for all the people who have to hear my testimony. And I have to walk them through this process. And I have to heal think about all the people who are waiting for me to come to them with the tools, to come to them with the real gospel of what grace actually looks like. Imagine all those people who are waiting for me to recover so that I can help them. It's not just about you,
Right.
it's about them.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He wanted to bring in and start to do mental health and do talks around mental health for black men because we don't talk mental health a lot. And so he went through this cycle of I want to look like this. I'm planning this. I need to do this, and we went over months of time of when are you starting? When are you starting? So I asked him a question. I said, "How many people have to die before you open your mouth and do what God asked you to do?" And he was like, "Whoa, I just never thought about it." I said, "We're talking mental health, suicide, addiction, people's lives
Wow.
changing, and you're worried about what it looks like. Just do it,
Right,
and the rest
right.
will come." The rest, oftentimes, we won't even take a step getting a divorce, making a change, asking for a promotion, getting out of dysfunctional relationships, healing relationships with our parents, because we don't know what it will look like to do that. And so we just don't do it.
So here is the principle because it's all about you.
Ooh,
It's all about me and how I feel. I'm in Game Changers right now. They keep telling me when confronting this whole situation, it's not about you. It's not about how you sound. It's not about your story.
right.
It's about what you can do to help them solve their problem. This is not about how you look. It's about you being transparent in a way that's going to engage them so you can give them the tools that they need.
Yeah.
But we still made it about us.
Yep. That's good. That's good. Because when we think about that, we think about how do I look? How does my story work? I'm nervous. Why are you nervous about something that you've lived and you can talk intelligently?
Man,
We wanna dress it up so much so we are looking for that accolade, that validation, that those childhood things, and you mentioned it, that we didn't get, we're looking for it, and instead of just operating in our gifts so that people can be reached,
right.
money comes when problems are solved. That's what business 101. When you solve somebody's problem, they will pay you. In life,
Man,
when you just heal and share your story, Not only and this is one of my little secrets I like to keep. I love
Mm,
to go on Extreme Execution or any of the other calls that we have to talk about our
mhm.
stories because I'm secretly getting information that can heal me and that I can apply to my life. And I've been making those applications through the strength of words like yours.
Man, man,
And so connect yourselves with like-minded individuals who are not accepting dysfunction no longer.
man.
We've been on here. I don't want to keep
Oh, man. Look,
another 2
I
hours.
if you find that we need to come back at it, schedule the time, man. People need to hear this podcast. They need to hear the value that you give to them. You are in the position of creating the atmosphere where gems are dropped. And people, when they access, because look, this isn't for everybody. And I have to tell myself that when other people are getting 500 and something listeners and they're just recycling junk.
Mm,
What you have to give isn't for everybody.
that's good.
These health food stores that pay the extra money to provide this food that is considered whole food
Mhm.
that will help people, they realize this is not for everybody.
Right.
Everybody is not a Whole Foods customer. Everybody is not a Trader Joe's. Everybody is not a healthy foods customer because that's not everybody's goal. So it's okay if what you do is not for everybody, as long as what you do hits their intended target. Dude,
That's good.
they have to have you.
That's beautiful. And I definitely appreciate that. Joey, if you can think of one thing, a takeaway, something to leave with the audience, something that you want them to know, something that you feel is a gem, what would that be?
Let me tell you something. Whatever you have to do to have wholeness and health is worth whatever you have to do to get it.
Mm,
The process, whatever that process is, I don't care how uncomfortable, I don't care how scary, I don't care how tedious it is. The result of wholeness and healing is many times over worth whatever you have to do to have it. Remember that. If you could think of having complete wholeness, com- uh, complete range of motion again, whether that's physical range of motion or emotional range of motion or speed motion, think of that result and think of staying comfortable. Compare it with what you're dealing with now, what you're comfortable with and you've accepted. There is no comparison. And whatever it would take, no matter how hard it is much easier than accepting dysfunction, knowing it's going to kill you.
that's good.
Whatever that is more than worth pursuing to have full health. And I challenge you, I challenge people, heal.
That's good. That is good. Joey, I thank you for sharing your time with us, your
Thank you, sir.
knowledge, your experience, all of that to help us heal, to continue to heal, to know that this is a journey and a process that we all need to go through for
Praise God. Praise God.
just for us, but for somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for letting me be on here, man. This is a blessing.
Absolutely. And again, family, as we close out, remember that healing is for you. You deserve.
Mhm.
I oftentimes find and coach people who they don't feel like they deserve better or want
Yeah.
or it's not, I'm supporting others or I'm not thinking about myself. No, you deserve to be healed. You deserve to be happy,
Yep.
wealthy, whole, and think about you cannot give. One of my cousins had put a post on Facebook and he said, "I'm so busy pouring into others, I don't often pour into myself." And I commented, I said, "You can't be a whole you unless you heal and focus on you first.
Mm,
You give a whole you to other people, because right now
mm,
you're not giving them the best of what you got.
mm.
You're not fo you're not focusing on yourself, and you need to do that first." So, thank you all again for joining us on another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Thank
All
you.
right.
See you next time.